How I learned to speak English. Well, when I was young, I struggled with English. I could read and write a little, but speaking was difficult. Whenever I tried, I felt nervous. My words didn't sound right, and I worried that people would laugh at me. One day, I decided to change. I wanted to speak English fluently, and I knew I had to practice. I started small. Every morning, I stood in front of the mirror and spoke to myself in English. I introduced myself, talked about my day, and even pretended to have conversations. Then I made a rule. I would watch only English movies and listen to English songs. At first, I didn't understand everything, but I didn't give up. I used subtitles, repeated sentences, and copied how the actors spoke. The biggest challenge was speaking with real people. I was afraid of making mistakes, but I knew I had to try. So I joined an online group where people practiced English. I spoke slowly, made mistakes, and sometimes felt embarrassed. But something amazing happened. Nobody laughed at me. Instead, they encouraged me. Day by day, my confidence grew. I started speaking English with my friends, teachers, and even strangers. I learned new words, improved my pronunciation, and felt more comfortable. Now, I can speak English well. I'm not perfect, but I don't let mistakes stop me. Learning a language is like a journey. You get better step by step. The secret is simple. Practice every day. Don't be afraid to speak, and never give up. As I continued my journey, I found new ways to improve. One of the best things I did was to think in English. Instead of translating words in my head, I tried to form sentences directly in English. It was difficult at first, but with time, it became natural. I also made a habit of keeping a small notebook. Whenever I heard a new word or phrase, I wrote it down. Later, I would use it in my conversations. This helped me remember and use English in real life. One day, something surprising happened. I was in a coffee shop when a tourist asked me for directions. Without thinking, I replied in English naturally and confidently. The tourist smiled and said, "Your English is very good." I felt so happy. That moment proved that all my hard work was paying off. Now, I don't just speak English, I enjoy it. I read books, watch videos, and even help others who are learning. I know what it feels like to struggle, so I always encourage them. Learning English changed my life. It opened new opportunities, gave me confidence, and connected me with people from different cultures. Looking back, I realize one thing. Speaking English well isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave, practicing every day, and believing in yourself. One day, I got an exciting opportunity. My school announced a speech competition, and the topic was the importance of learning English. At first, I hesitated. Could I really stand in front of a crowd and speak in English? The old me would have said no, but now, after all my practice, I decided to challenge myself. I spent days preparing my speech. I practiced in front of the mirror, just like before. I recorded my voice and listened carefully to my pronunciation. I even asked my friends to listen and give feedback. Step by step, I gained confidence. Finally, the big day arrived. I stood on the stage, looking at the audience. My hands were shaking, but I took a deep breath and started speaking. At first, I was nervous, but as I continued, I felt more comfortable. The words flowed naturally. I spoke about my journey, how I struggled, how I practiced, and how English had changed my life. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, the audience clapped loudly. I couldn't believe it. Later, the judges announced the results. I had won second place. It wasn't just about winning. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. That day, I realized something important. Learning a language isn't just about words and grammar. It's about confidence, persistence, and believing in yourself. If I could go from being too afraid to speak to standing on a stage, anyone could do it. Since then, I've kept learning and improving. I watch English podcasts, read more books, and have conversations whenever I can. But most importantly, I help others. When I see someone struggling with English, I tell them my story and say, if I can do it, So can you. As time passed, my love for English grew even stronger. I no longer saw it as something difficult or scary. I saw it as a key to new opportunities. One day, I decided to take my learning to the next level. I joined an online language exchange program where I could talk to native English speakers. At first, I was nervous. What if they didn't understand me? What if I made mistakes? But I reminded myself of what I had learned. Making mistakes is part of the journey. During my first conversation, I spoke slowly and carefully. The person I was talking to, a friendly man from Canada, smiled and said, "You're doing great. Don't worry about mistakes. Just keep talking." His words gave me confidence, and I started speaking more freely. The more I practiced, the more I improved. I learned new expressions, slang, and even cultural differences. I realized that learning a language isn't just about words. It's about understanding people, their way of thinking, and their way of life. Then, another exciting thing happened. I got an opportunity to help a foreign visitor in my city. A tourist from Australia was lost, looking for a famous landmark. I stepped forward and explained the directions to him in clear English. He smiled and said, "Your English is really good. Thank you so much." That moment made me feel proud. It showed me how useful English could be in real life. As I continued practicing, I started setting bigger goals. I wanted to watch English movies without subtitles. I wanted to write stories in English. And one day, I dreamed of traveling to an English-speaking country and speaking fluently with native speakers. Every step I took, every mistake I made, and every conversation I had brought me closer to my goal. I had come a long way from the shy person who was afraid to speak. Now, I embraced challenges, enjoyed learning, and looked forward to every new experience. As I kept improving, English became more than just a language. It became a part of my daily life. I started thinking in English, dreaming in English, and even talking to myself in English without realizing it. It felt natural, like second nature. One day, my English teacher noticed my progress and gave me a special opportunity. She asked me to help other students who were struggling with English. At first, I wasn't sure if I could teach others. But then I remembered how I had started, nervous, unsure, and afraid of mistakes. I knew exactly how they felt, and I wanted to help. I started by sharing my own story with them. I told them how I had practiced every day, how I had faced challenges, and how I had never given up. Then, I gave them simple tips. Talk to yourself in English. It builds confidence. Watch movies and listen to songs. Learning should be fun. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is a step toward improvement. Find a friend or a group to practice with. Learning together makes it easier. At first, some students hesitated. They were shy, just like I had been. But as we practiced together, they started speaking more freely. I saw the same journey I had gone through happening to them, and it made me happy. One student, named Ahmed, was especially shy. He never spoke in class because he was afraid of making mistakes. I encouraged him and told him my own story. I said, "Just start. Don't worry about mistakes. The more you practice, the better you'll get." Slowly, he began speaking, and within a few months, his confidence grew. Seeing Ahmed and others improve made me realize something important. Learning English isn't just about me anymore. It's about helping others too. Then, an incredible opportunity came my way. My school organized an international exchange program where students could visit another country and experience a new culture. And guess what? I was selected to be part of the program. I couldn't believe it. A few years ago, I was afraid to speak English, and now I was going to use it to travel to a new country. This was proof that learning English had truly changed my life. As I packed my bags for the trip, I smiled, thinking about how far I had come. My journey was still going, and I knew there were many more adventures ahead. The day finally arrived for my trip abroad. I was both excited and nervous. This was my first time traveling to an English-speaking country, and I knew it would be a true test of everything I had learned. As soon as I landed, I heard English all around me, not from a book, not from a movie, but from real people speaking naturally. At first, it felt overwhelming. The accents were different, people spoke fast, and I didn't understand everything. But I reminded myself, I've come this far. I can do this. At the airport, I confidently asked an officer for directions. He understood me, smiled, and helped me. That small moment gave me confidence. I realized I didn't need to be perfect. I just needed to communicate. During my stay, I had many opportunities to practice. I ordered food at restaurants, asked strangers for help, and even made new friends. One day, I had a long conversation with a local student about our cultures. We laughed, shared stories, and exchanged contact information. That was the moment I truly felt I was fluent. The most unforgettable experience was when I had to give a presentation about my country to an international audience. Standing in front of people from different parts of the world, speaking English with confidence, I realized how much I had grown. After the trip, I returned home with a new mindset. English was no longer just a skill. It was a bridge to the world. I could now connect with people from different countries, learn about new cultures, and explore endless opportunities. Since then, I've continued my journey. I help others learn English, I challenge myself with new words and expressions, and I never stop practicing. Looking back, I remember the shy person who was afraid to speak. Now, I see someone who embraces challenges and loves the language. English changed my life, and I know it can change yours too. As time passed, I realized that learning English had not only given me confidence, but had also opened doors I had never imagined. With my improved skills, I started applying for new opportunities, scholarships, internships, and even international conferences. One day, I received an email that made my heart race. It was an invitation to participate in a global youth summit, where young leaders from different countries would come together to share ideas and discuss important world issues. The event would be held in the United States, and English would be the main language of communication. At that moment, I felt a mix of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and pride. Just a few years ago, I had been afraid to speak even a few words in English. Now I was about to represent my country on an international stage. Before the trip, I prepared carefully. I practiced my speaking skills, wrote down key points for discussions, and even researched different accents to understand a variety of speaking styles. I wanted to be ready for anything. When I arrived at the summit, I was amazed. People from all over the world were gathered in one place, sharing ideas, debating, and building friendships. At first, I was a little shy, but then I reminded myself, I belong here. I worked hard for this. During one of the panel discussions, I raised my hand and shared my thoughts confidently. The audience listened, nodded, and even clapped when I finished. That moment proved to me that language is not just about words. It's about expressing your thoughts, connecting with others, and making an impact. Throughout the event, I made new friends from different countries. We talked about our cultures, laughed about funny language mistakes, and promised to stay in touch. I realized that English wasn't just a tool for communication. It was a bridge that brought people together. After the summit, I returned home feeling more inspired than ever. I started a small English speaking club in my community to help others improve their skills, just like I had. I shared my experiences, encouraged them to practice daily, and reminded them that learning a language is a journey, not a race. Now, as I look ahead, I know my journey with English is far from over. I dream of traveling more, learning new things, and maybe even writing a book about my experiences. But most importantly, I want to help others believe in themselves, just like I once had to believe in myself. As my journey with English continued, new opportunities kept coming my way. One day, I received an unexpected message. It was from an international organization looking for volunteers to help with an online English learning program. They wanted people who could mentor beginners, share learning techniques, and encourage them to speak confidently. Without hesitation, I said yes. At first I was nervous. Could I really teach English to others? Would they understand me? But then, I remembered my own struggles, the fear of making mistakes, the hesitation to speak, the frustration of not finding the right words. I knew exactly how they felt, and I wanted to help. I started mentoring students from different parts of the world. Some were from Asia, some from Africa, and others from South America. They all had different accents, different levels of English, and different challenges. But they had one thing in common. They wanted to learn. During our sessions, I shared everything that had helped me. Speaking daily, even to yourself. The more you talk, the more confident you become. Learning from real-life conversations, movies, songs, podcasts, and even social media. Not being afraid of mistakes, because mistakes are proof that you're learning. One of my students, Maria from Brazil, reminded me of myself. She was shy, afraid to speak, and always worried about getting everything perfect. I told her, "Don't wait for perfection, just start speaking." She took my advice, and within a few months, she improved so much that she gave a short speech in English at her university. Seeing her success made me feel incredibly proud. As I continued mentoring, I realized that English had become more than just a skill for me. It had become a way to inspire others. It wasn't just about grammar and vocabulary anymore. It was about helping people find their voices and express themselves confidently. Then, something amazing happened. One of my students recommended me for a paid teaching position at an international language center. I couldn't believe it. What had started as a personal struggle had now turned into a career opportunity. Now, I teach English to students from different backgrounds, and every day I see them grow just like I once did. I always tell them, if I could do it, so can you. Just keep going and never give up. And so, my journey continues, not just as a learner, but as a teacher, a mentor, and an inspiration to others. Who knows where English will take me next? Maybe one day I'll write a book, travel the world, or even start my own language school. As I continued teaching and mentoring, something inside me changed. I no longer saw myself as just a student of English. I had become a guide, a motivator, and a believer in the power of learning. One day, I received an invitation to speak at an online conference for language learners. The topic was how to overcome the fear of speaking English. It felt like a full circle moment. Years ago, I was the one afraid to speak. Now, I was about to inspire others to overcome their fears. I prepared for days, making sure my message was clear and encouraging. When the day arrived, I logged into the virtual meeting and saw people from different countries, all eager to learn. As I spoke, I shared my journey, my struggles, my breakthroughs, and my lessons. I told them, mistakes are not failures. They are proof that you're learning. Confidence comes from practice, not perfection. The only way to speak fluently is to start speaking today. After my talk, something incredible happened. People started sending me messages, thanking me for inspiring them. Some said they would finally start speaking without fear. Others asked for tips to improve faster. One learner even said, "Because of you, I believe I can do it too." That moment made me realize my purpose. I wasn't just learning English for myself anymore. I was learning to help others grow, just like I had. From that day on, I started writing about my experiences. I created a blog where I shared my best tips, personal struggles, and success stories of my students. Soon, my posts started reaching people from around the world. Messages poured in from learners who felt encouraged, who related to my story, who saw a part of themselves in my journey. Then, something I never expected happened. A well-known language learning platform reached out to me. They had read my blog and wanted me to create a course on how to speak English with confidence. It felt like a dream. I worked hard on the course, recording lessons, sharing personal stories, and designing exercises to help people practice. When it was finally launched, thousands of learners joined. Seeing their progress and hearing their success stories made me feel that all my struggles, all my challenges, had been worth it. Now, I wake up every day knowing that English has changed my life in ways I never imagined. It has given me opportunities, friendships, confidence, and a purpose. And yet, I know this is just the beginning. Maybe one day I'll write a book about my journey. Maybe I'll give a TED Talk. Maybe I'll travel the world, meeting the very students I once mentored online. One thing is certain. This journey will never end, because learning is a lifelong adventure. As my journey with English continued, new opportunities kept coming my way. One day, I received an invitation to attend an international education summit in London. It was a conference where educators, language experts, and students from around the world would come together to discuss the future of language learning. At first, I couldn't believe it. Me? A guest at an international summit. Just a few years ago, I had been afraid to speak even a few words in English. Now, I was invited to share my experiences with people from all over the world. I packed my bags, feeling both excited and nervous. When I arrived in London, I was amazed. The city was beautiful, and the people were friendly. But what excited me the most was the event itself. I met educators, learners, and experts who had dedicated their lives to language learning. During the summit, I attended workshops, listened to inspiring talks, and even participated in group discussions. But the highlight of the event came when I was asked to speak on a panel about the role of confidence in language learning. Standing on that stage, I looked at the audience, hundreds of people eager to learn and grow. I took a deep breath and began speaking. I shared my journey, how I had once been too afraid to speak, how I had practiced daily, and how I had eventually found my confidence. I told them, language is not just about words, it's about connection. The only way to become confident is to start before you're ready. Every mistake is a lesson. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow. When I finished, the audience clapped loudly. Some even came up to me afterward, thanking me for inspiring them. One young student said, "I used to be afraid of speaking English, but after hearing you, I believe I can do it too." That moment made me realize that English had given me more than just a skill. It had given me a voice, a purpose, and a way to help others. After returning home, I felt more motivated than ever. I continued mentoring students, writing my blog, and sharing my experiences. I even started planning my next big project, writing a book about my English learning journey. As I sat down to write, I smiled, thinking about how far I had come. What had started as a personal struggle had turned into a mission to help others. And so, my journey continues. One conversation, one lesson, one student at a time. Who knows where English will take me next? Maybe one day I'll be standing on an even bigger stage, inspiring the world. As I continued writing my book, I realized how much my journey had transformed not just my English skills, but my entire life. Each chapter I wrote reminded me of the struggles, the small victories, and the unexpected opportunities that had shaped my path. But as much as I loved sharing my story through writing, I wanted to do more. I wanted to reach people in real time, to speak directly to them, to motivate them, just as others had once motivated me. So I took a bold step. I launched my own YouTube channel dedicated to English learning and confidence building. At first, it felt strange talking to a camera. What if no one watched? What if people criticized me? But then, I remembered the advice I always gave my students. Start before you're ready. So I uploaded my first video, a simple message about overcoming the fear of speaking English. To my surprise, people started watching. Some commented saying they felt inspired. Others asked questions, wanting to learn more. With every video I posted, my audience grew. People from different countries sent me messages saying how my videos were helping them. One day, I received a message from a young woman named Aisha from Egypt. She wrote, I've been afraid to speak English for years, but after watching your videos, I finally had the courage to introduce myself in English during a class presentation. Thank you for helping me believe in myself." Reading that message brought tears to my eyes. This was it. This was my purpose. From that moment, I dedicated myself fully to my mission. I expanded my content, creating lessons, sharing tips, and even interviewing people who had overcome their fears of speaking English. I started live sessions where learners could practice speaking with me in real time. Then, another unexpected opportunity arrived. A major online learning platform noticed my work and invited me to create a full-length English confidence course. They wanted me to design a structured program for learners worldwide. I worked day and night, putting my heart into the course. When it launched, thousands of students signed up. Seeing people take my lessons, apply them, and grow in confidence was one of the most fulfilling moments of my life. By now, my journey had taken me places I had never imagined. I had spoken at international conferences. I was finishing my book. I had built a community of learners online. But I knew this was still just the beginning. I started setting even bigger goals. Travel to different countries to meet my students in person. Organize live workshops where learners could practice speaking fearlessly. Establish my own English learning academy to help even more people. Looking back, I could hardly believe how far I had come. From a shy learner afraid to speak to a global mentor helping thousands, my journey had been nothing short of incredible. And yet, there was still more to do. So, I keep going. One lesson, one student, one dream at a time, because English isn't just a language, it's a door to the world. As my journey continued, something extraordinary happened. I was invited to deliver a TEDx talk. The moment I received the email, my heart skipped a beat. Me? Speaking at TEDx? It felt unreal. But deep down, I knew this was the perfect opportunity to share my story with the world. The theme of the event was breaking barriers, and I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about: how learning English had changed my life. I spent weeks preparing my speech, refining every word, practicing in front of a mirror, and imagining myself standing on that famous red carpet. I wanted my talk to be more than just a speech. I wanted it to be a message of hope for anyone struggling with language learning or confidence. Finally, the big day arrived. As I stood backstage, my hands trembled slightly. But then, I reminded myself, you have lived this story. You are not just speaking words, you are sharing your truth. As I walked onto the stage, I looked at the audience. Hundreds of faces, eager to listen. I took a deep breath and began. I spoke about my struggles, how I once feared speaking English, how I practiced every day, how I faced failures but never gave up. I shared how English had taken me to different countries, allowed me to meet incredible people, and even given me a career I never imagined. I ended with a message that came straight from my heart. You don't need to be perfect to speak English. You just need to be brave enough to start. When I finished, there was silence for a moment, and then applause. Loud, powerful applause that filled the entire room. Some people even stood up. At that moment, I realized this was no longer just my journey. It was a journey I was sharing with the world. After the event, people came up to me, sharing their own struggles with English. Some said they felt inspired to start speaking. Others said they finally believed they could succeed. One young man told me, "Your speech changed the way I see learning English. I always thought I wasn't smart enough, but now I know I just need to keep going." That was the moment I knew. This was my calling. Taking the next step. After the TEDx talk, my life changed even more. My video went viral, reaching millions of learners worldwide. Messages poured in, people thanking me, asking for advice, and sharing their progress. I was invited to conduct workshops in different countries, where I met students face to face and helped them break their fear of speaking English. I finally finished my book, and when it was published, It became a bestseller in the language learning community. Seeing my book in bookstores, knowing it was helping thousands, was a dream come true. Then, the biggest milestone came. I launched my own English Learning Academy, a place where students from all over the world could learn English with confidence, practice without fear, and achieve their dreams, just like I had. The journey never ends. Looking back, I see a journey filled with struggles, small victories, and life-changing moments. I started as a nervous learner, afraid of making mistakes. Now I stand on global stages, teach thousands of students, and help people find their voices. But this is not the end. It's just another chapter. Because learning never stops. And neither do the opportunities that come with it. So, I continue. One lesson. One speech. One student at a time. Because English isn't just a language, it's a bridge to the world. A new chapter begins. After launching my English Learning Academy, I felt like I had reached a milestone I once thought was impossible. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much more to do, so many more lives to touch, and so many dreams to help others achieve. One day, while reviewing messages from my students, I received an email that made my heart race. It was from a major international university inviting me to deliver a guest lecture on the power of language in changing lives. One day, while reviewing messages from my students, I received an email that made my heart race. It was from a major international university inviting me to deliver a guest lecture on the power of language in changing lives. I read the email twice, then 3 times. Me? Speaking at a university? I had once been too afraid to even introduce myself in English. Now, universities wanted me to teach their students. I accepted the invitation, and soon I found myself standing in front of a hall filled with eager students and professors. As I spoke, I saw nods of understanding, eyes filled with inspiration, and hands scribbling down notes. At the end of my lecture, a professor approached me and said, "Your story needs to be shared with educators around the world. Have you ever thought about training teachers?" His words planted a seed in my mind. What if I could train teachers so they could inspire and empower even more students? A bigger mission. Training teachers worldwide. With this new vision, I began traveling to different countries, conducting workshops and training teachers on how to create confidence-based English learning environments. I visited schools in small villages where students had little access to resources but carried big dreams in their hearts. I saw teachers who were passionate but lacked the right tools to make learning English fun and engaging. I worked with them, sharing everything I had learned over the years. I encouraged them to make English learning more interactive, to remove the fear of mistakes, and to focus on real-life communication. Seeing the impact was incredible. Students who once hesitated to speak were now raising their hands. Teachers who once relied only on textbooks were now using creative methods to teach. And then, a new dream was born. Creating a global English learning foundation. I realized that there were millions of students around the world who wanted to learn English but didn't have the resources or support. So I founded a Global English Learning Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing free educational materials, mentorship, and scholarships to students in underprivileged areas. Through this foundation, we built small learning centers in communities where English education was limited. We provided books, internet access, and free online courses. And most importantly, we connected students with mentors who could guide, encourage, and inspire them. A dream that keeps growing. As I traveled the world, I met students whose lives were transformed by learning English. A young girl from India who won a scholarship to study abroad after gaining confidence in her speaking skills. A farmer's son from Africa who started an online business because he could now communicate with international customers. A single mother from South America who secured a remote job in an international company because she learned English through our free programs. These stories fueled my passion even more. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about changing lives, one word at a time. What's next? The journey never ends. Looking back, I see a journey that started with fear but turned into something powerful. I once thought English was just a language. Now I know it's a tool for transformation. And as for the future, I dream of expanding my foundation to reach even more students worldwide. I want to publish more books that inspire and guide English learners. I hope to speak at even bigger global events, sharing my message with millions. I want to develop innovative learning apps that make English accessible to everyone. The possibilities are endless. And so, my story continues. Not just my story, our story. Because everyone deserves the chance to speak, to connect, and to dream big. And this journey?